right, I think we're doing okay. I hope everybody can see me. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and get started. Again, this will be recorded. It is being streamed live also on YouTube, all over. So thank you so much. Thank you for joining us today for the overview of Media Composer 2020.4. I do want to do a little bit of housekeeping first because there is some potential Q&A. I actually see some stuff that's actually coming through already. So this is how, if you do have a question you would like to submit while I'm doing the demo, please click the Q&A icon at the menu bar, type in your question and submit it. We have a whole host of people who are online helping to support the webinar to help answer any questions you may have. So this is the way to do it. All right, I hope everybody can hear me. My name is Michael Krulik. I'm the video product evangelist for Avid here out of Los Angeles, California. Also joining me today as some co-hosts and helping support are Corey Tedrow, a senior solutions specialist out of Burlington, Massachusetts, Emanuel Zubizarreta, senior solutions specialist out of Latin America. And there's a whole plethora of other people online, Mariana Montague and a whole bunch of her team who are helping support this as well. So I want to thank everybody for joining us. I think this is going to be great. Now, before I get started, I know that we can't say enough how things have rapidly changed in our world, and I'm hoping that you, your friends, your family, everybody is actually doing okay at this really strange time. So hope you're well, and again, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. It's really nice. Now, as you know, Media Composer had recently been reimagined. We created a new UI, but we also wanted to create a new experience for a lot of people who are out there. We wanted to make it easier and more intuitive for somebody who has never seen or used Media Composer before. And we also worked with a lot of current editors out there to help solve pain points that they may have had in the editorial process, but also allow them to work the way that they have for years, which is very important. But ultimately, we wanted to make editing more creative. We wanted to make it more fun, more focused, and more efficient for better storytelling, which was very important. Now, since the launch of the new Media Composer last year, in June, we actually told the world about the new user experience. We have added many new features. Not able to list them all here, but just a few highlights. We did add the new project sidebar, which actually gives editors the familiarity of having the project window where they can go in and organize their bins and their folders. You have the bin left lock, which allows you to lock part of your bin so that when you're moving columns around, you're not hiding any important metadata that you want to see. We've also added features to the Avid Titler Plus, so things like the video fill in your title, which is very great. And also, we're all fully ACES capable. So a full ACES capable workflow with 32-bit float point precision in the editorial process, as well as being able to link to and export OpenEXR media and export IMF packages out of Media Composer also. So that's just to name a few features that have been added. But as we venture into Media Composer 2020.4, we've taken editing to another level. Now, all of the engineering has actually been done under the hood with the new Avid Media Engine. And this is important and a huge undertaking, and we think that everyone's really going to like the direction that we are going. Now, this, I think a lot of people will be excited about. As we start out, I'd like to mention that Avid Media Composer 2020.4 is fully supported on the Catalina Mac operating system. Yay! This has been one of the most anticipated requests from our customers. We've seen it all over social media, so really important. This took a long time to do. And taking a long time, we did need to take that time to do the work properly and not release something before it was ready for prime time. So we're proud to say Catalina, fully supported on Media Composer 2020.4. Now, most of the engineering around this did require us to make changes in Media Composer and our reliance on QuickTime. This is also why it took a while to do it, and also QuickTime libraries. Now, this is a big deal in how we link, export, and in some cases, import and export media files, and why the UME, or Universal Media Engine, was designed. Let me just pop into Media Composer and show you how some of that works. So I do want to thank the team from the Orville who gave us
got you.
some really nice footage
I have
to
retaliated. That is
work with here. So a really nice timeline here and sequence. But as far as UME, I'm going to go and open up a blank bin here. I'm going to go to the source browser and navigate to, let's take a look at some linked media. I have some nice drone footage here. Now, the important thing to note, if you can see here in the source browser, is it is linking using UME. So it's using UME as a default. Now, the important thing here is if QuickTime is required, it actually will use QuickTime. So if QuickTime is installed on your system and you need to link using QuickTime, it will link using that. If I select the files and click link, watch over here in the bin, as you'll see that it's actually using UME or QuickTime to take a look and link to those files. Now, by the way, the use of UME has already been in the software. We've actually had it in there for a while. It was used to work with OP1A media and OpenEXR media for linking and importing with a variety of MOV and MP4 files. And we'll also be adding more support along the way. So that's very, very important. So the nice thing here, or the question we want to ask, is to UME or not UME? That is the question. I cracked myself up. So basically, using the UME technology does provide a lot of functionality, include improved performance with H.264, as it actually works better than AMA, or traditional linking. It also supports files greater than 4K. It supports asymmetrical QuickTime, where audio and video might be not at the same length. So it might be starting or ending a little bit ahead or later in the QuickTime file, but we actually will insert black or silence instead of chopping off the media when it's linked. And also adding support for image-based sequences. So moving forward, UME is designed to help you with more format support and overall functionality. That's really important. Now, this also includes things like our distributed processing. Distributed processing allows you to offload processor-intensive tasks that could be sent, like renders and transcodes, to unused computers at your studio or facility. So again, a lot of great technology around UME. Now, another area that required a lot of work was around how we work with ProRes media from a Media Composer when you're not on a Mac. Well, I'm happy to say that you can now export from a Windows system an Apple ProRes MOV file. That's right, OP1A, MXF OP1A and OP Atom as well. But from export, you can choose ProRes as an export from Windows. All right, so enough PowerPoint here. Let's go ahead and get into the actual demonstration. I'll show you Media Composer 2020.4. All right, so going into the UI, I mean, basically you all should know the new UI. You do have all the paneled control and things like that. But what I want to point out when you first start out with Media Composer is we have a new project management window. So a little different than what we had before. What we have is this nice new visual experience. Now the window is resizable. You can go in and change the size. We have a little sidebar here. The sidebar is where you can choose to select your project, or you can choose what's new. Basically, when a new version comes out, the first thing everybody asks or wants to know is what's new in the new software. So what's really nice about this for the existing user is it's helpful that you can easily now find what's new or changed in different versions, and it's in one location. So accessing the new or what's new area gives you up starting with 2019.6. You'll see I open this up and you do get a little high level overview of any new features that may have been added with that version. And also, if you need help on that, if you click on the little information button, it takes you right to local documentation about that feature also. So this is great for the new editor. How do I find that information? I can do it from what's new. All right, if I go to select my project, this is going to be pretty much the same thing that you're familiar with before, but you don't have the radio buttons to go into your external or your shared storage or your local. You now have a pull down for your local, for the location of where your projects are, whether you're on shared storage or local. Everything else is pretty much the same. You change your formats, choose your settings right there. Now, as far as the display right here, you do have a slider that you change the size of your setup. Now you see I do have, script or display mode, but I also have a frame mode. Now the representation here by default, you'll see that there is a generic Media Composer icon. If you're in your project and you right click on your source or record window, there is now a selection for choose a poster frame for the project window. And you would be able to choose what you'd want as a representative frame right there. And of course you can change the size here. If you're in your column view, you can go in and add, some column information. You can hide it, you can change the order, you can sort, and you can even change the font size. So if you do need to change the size of the font visually, you can do that. So the new project manual, new project management window, just a whole nice new visual experience there. So let me go into my project. Here we have a little demo project. Now through each version of Media Composer that we release, we do look for many of the top feature requests that do come in. There is a lot of engineering that's done here. And then we decide how we execute and design all of these. Now, one of the, to that point, how many sequences do you have that are untitled sequences or copies of copies of copies of media that you have, or you create stuff and you have all of these .news? Well, I think that assistants and anybody who needs to manage and change any metadata or naming is really going to love this new feature called bulk edit. So I'm going to select all of these untitled sequences here. If I go to bulk edit, you can right click and choose them, or you'll see it's down here in the fast menu. And bulk edit gives me a window which lets me go in and change or modify any column information. I also can change or choose, just the sequences, subclips, master clips, bin items, or what I have selected. And now, through the changes here, replace the column data, you do get a little identifier or a result, and you see the actual result will populate here. So if I want to change all of the untitled sequences to be, let's just call it EP for episode, you'll see it adds EP here and also gives me my modified value. I can also add episode 273. Put a little underscore there. It's adding that information. Plus I can even go in and add maybe a counter. Maybe they're sequential files or maybe sequential sequences I want to add. So if I now hit commit, watch what happens here as it now changes all of that information for me. That's pretty awesome. Let's say I want to have comments. I have comments here for these drone shots. So I can go in and select all of these shots here. We'll go to bulk edit. And I now want to change those selections. I want to call them, we'll just say drone underscore, but I want to add specific custom column metadata of the comments. So if I come down here to comments, you'll see that it has added drone and every comment that was added here. Once I hit commit, it now has changed all of those. So again, another fantastic feature with bulk edit. Now, also just some other information or other things in the bin. You may notice that the bin background was actually the color of the tabs. We've actually changed in the interface settings. If I go to settings and user and go to interface, there is a selection under bin to use the bin background color as tabs only. So you'll see if I turn that off, the color of the tab actually takes over the entire bin. This was just a request, something that, some people may prefer not to have a whole bunch of colors in their display. But about it only being in the tabs is that you now have a little delineation when you have multiple tabs in your bin container. So that's really nice. Now also the bin map. I don't know how many of you use the bin map feature. The bin map, if I turn that on, brings up a nice little bin map in my bin. But what we've changed is the transparency. Before, you could see a lot more of the frames behind this. We actually changed the transparency, so this stands out a lot more than it did before. Now, a lot of people liked the bin map there. It was a very innovative new feature, but what's really cool is we now have applied that also to the timeline. So right now, this is a very nice sequence, again, from Orville. You could zoom in. You still have your control where you can go in and scroll back and forth, scroll up and down to take a look at your audio tracks. But if I turn on the sequence map, which by the way, this is mappable. You can map it to a button, you can map it to a key. I put it in right here. What I get is, ooh, look at that, a nice little sequence map on my timeline. So I can now navigate to any part of my sequence right here. Now, some people may prefer to not have that over top of their sequence. So what's really nice is I can go to my timeline settings, and there is an option for the sequence map. It says open sequence map as an overlay to the timeline. If I turn that off and apply it, now when I turn on my sequence map, it comes up as a separate panel. And for those of you that know the new UI, I can now take that panel, drop it in as a docked panel, and I now have some nice control here. Again, that's kind of cool. I kind of like that. Now, also looking at clips here. So we'll close that. If I want to take a look at muted clips, do you all use muted clips? Have you all seen being able to go in and mute your clips? If I select this clip right here and I right click, we do have options to mute. Just turns it off temporarily. But imagine you have a really long sequence and you need to go in and find all of those clips that are muted. Well, here's several versions ago, we put in the select option. If you right click in your timeline, you see select left, select right, select stuff with the same source clip color, but we just added select muted clips. So now the muted clips are selected. I can now go in and say unmute, and it now unmutes all of those clips. So we're taking out that tedious process of having to go into your sequence and find every single clip that's muted to go in and unmute it. So again, a nice time-saving feature right there. Now, as we look to also streamline the process of editorial, let's find another little piece here. We have found that there are many products that Avid has that we could actually use some of that technology in Media Composer. And to enhance that, or the last enhancement that I want to show here in the timeline is called Strip Silence. So Strip Silence is a feature in Pro Tools. It lets you go in and take silence out of your Pro Tools session. But now with the Strip Silence in Media Composer, I can go in and take out any silence in my sequence. This could be, total silence. This could be maybe an interviewer who's off camera. So we do have an interviewer here. You can see some sound, but I want to go in and chop that off. So I have Chris McCaleb here talking about, editing.
Sure.
You can hear
What makes me pick a project?
the background interviewer. If I go into strip silence from sequence, I do get a selection, a setting where I can choose the tracks where I want to do the strip silence. I can also mark in and out. I can choose the silence threshold. So at what level do I want to have it strip the silence? Minimum duration, I said for about 2 seconds. And also you can give a pad start and end. This is nice because it won't strip the silence immediately up to where they're talking, but it will give a little bit of padding. So when I say, okay, watch the timeline, as you'll see, it actually cut out any silence from the sequence. Again, we're trying to save some extra time there. Now, looking at the overall UI, I don't think, well, maybe you did or didn't notice, when I did turn on the put in the panel here, when I close the panel, you see how everything adjusts and closes? So that's the same thing if I had like maybe audio on my audio workspace and I closed the audio mixer, everything would close. Well, some people may not like that. They may not like the fact that things adjust when they move their panel. So what we've introduced is under Windows to add a blank panel. And this is just a free-form panel. I can go in and take this panel and actually dock it or move it anywhere in my workspace. And now I can save that so that if that panel is removed or if I want to drop something in there, let's say I want to take my audio mixer and I want to drop that into my panel here, I could do that. Or if I wanted to go in and have anytime anything is removed, let's say I go to my inspector window here. If I go to my UI, go to the interface settings, and under general, there's a closing a docked tool will replace it with a blank panel. If that's on, the nice thing about this is when I go in to close something that has a docked panel in a workspace, it actually will put a blank panel in its place. So it's not doing that shifting. It's not disrupting my editing groove there. So a really nice tool to go in and change that with blank panels. Now, again, for years, we're trying to help people with ways that they work. And we've always been able to go in and change size and fonts in everything except the effect palette. I think a lot of people will be very excited about this, but now with the Media Composer effect palette, if you right click, you can now go in and change the font size. That's right. I think I hear cheers from those editors around me out in Burbank in LA. And now you can even go in and change the slider here. You can move the slider to actually expose or hide any of those effects also. So again, some nice features there. It's the little things that actually let you go in to do that. And other little things are mapping buttons. Now you've been able to, at least in the version before in 2019.12, you had more buttons that you could map across here. And in 2020.4, we've now extended that to the buttons on the bottom of your timeline window here. So if I go to my command palette and I want to take a button, let's take maybe the toggle digital audio scrub and want to put that down here. Those are now mappable buttons. Again, fully controllable, mappable down on your timeline there. Cool. So more customizing, more control, all set for you. Let's jump into titles. So going into some titles here, let's take a look at some rough titles here. I also created a workspace. Again, your workspaces can be totally customizable. So I created a nice workspace here. So when I am creating titles, I can actually see them in a nice single viewer here.
So I asked them if they've ever seen the line script that a script supervisor will.
And just to show you, I just want to show a couple of things with the new Avid Titler Plus because it is really easy to use. So I can go in and mark an in and an out in an area. I do have a title track here. I click the Avid Titler Plus, and it takes me right into my titles here. So now if I go in and hit T, I get a little bar here. I can type in Doc Kreutzer, ACE. We'll take that, and maybe I want to change that from being italic to being maybe a little larger. Changing the font size. The fonts, if I do scroll through here, we actually get a look at what the font actually is. Simple skew. If I do want to change the color, I double click, change the color. But something that's hidden is to the left of the little box here, the little color, is a little swatch, a little box that if I click, it puts me into a quad. This is for doing gradients. So if I double click now, I can go in and choose other colors to apply and actually create gradients now to titles, to shapes. If you do go in to draw a shape now, by default, it actually stays in the correct perfect circle aspect ratio. If I do hold down Shift to create it, it does give me more of a freeform shape. So you can go in and start, drawing shapes and backgrounds, borders and things like that. All right. But what I also want to point out here, something new in 2020.4 is, let's say I have all my titles set here.
Who hasn't seen a script sync before, it probably takes about 15 hours out of my week.
So if I want to change any of these, I have a whole series of titles or presets that I have created here already. If I was to take these and simply drop them onto my titles here, let's say I take the Georgia yellow, it actually changes, but it changes the entire font, text, everything that was set in that preset, just like any effect that you create and drop in from Media Composer. But what if you have a look? What if you've created a different font and a different color, and I just want to change Catherine Hates font, but I don't want to change the verbiage. I don't want to change what's typed in. So if I go into the Avid Titler Plus, I can now take any preset that has been created. I've selected her name. Let's take the Palatino. We'll drop that right on the title here. And you'll see it's actually changing the font, but not the name. So if I do that same thing with, let's go down to Stuart right here. We'll go in and say, I want Stuart's name to be Palatino. So you can go in and create a whole library of different preset colors, font styles, and things like that, and you don't have to keep retyping in names just to change them. That's another great new feature in the Avid Titler Plus with 2020.4. Create those libraries and just start working. Where we also made some adjustments, if anybody's working in ACES, the Academy Color Encoding System, let me go ahead and get out of here. Let me go to, we'll just bring up Chris right here, and I want to bring in my color spaces. So Chris is at Rec 709, so it is an HD project. If I go into my formats, and I want to change this color space from 709 to be ACES, a couple of things to make note of is the color will change because it's now changing to a new output color space. And we are going full 32-bit float. You'll also see that by the full blue box color down here. It's full quality float by default because that's how you have to work when you're in an ACES color space. And you'll also see something we've added is up to 16 new color spaces in the output color space or display color space. So all new with the ACES capable workflows. Now the way we work here, now Chris again is 709, we need to go into any media here if we need to put it into an ACES capable workflow. If it is already ACES, it would look fine, but for items that are not, we can go in and change the color adapter for any ACES setup. So it could be a Canon camera, it could be ARRI, it could be Panasonic. I'm just going to use generic because I want to take what is currently a Rec 709 color space or clip and put it into the ACES color space. So once I apply that change, you'll see that Chris looks like he's in the normal color space because I applied that look. All right. Now the nice thing here is, well, of course I need to go in and update my sequence. So we'll go to the sequence there. I will go and update my sequence, refresh it from any color adapter changes. Whoops. And that would change or should change across the whole thing. We go ahead and just cut that in. Here we go. So now if I go into my color correction mode, the important thing here, because I need to go in and change my values, is I do have more granularity when I am changing control when I am in an ACES capable workflow. I need that granularity to make the change. If I do hold down Shift, you'll see that it jumps incrementally by 1, and you get a more dramatic change. So the important thing is granularity when you're in color, and this also works when you are in your hue offsets. So more granularity there. Fully ACES capable from ingest, from editing to output, and full delivery. Now, another thing I want to just point out is Quibi. You may have heard of Quibi. Quibi is that new format for mobile devices. It was released in early April, where basically if you are creating something for Quibi, you need to create 2 different sequences. So you need to create a horizontal one, and you need to create a vertical one also. And the reason for that is Quibi adds that secret sauce to go in and make the change to cut from one to the next when you are working, when you are creating. So if I go in to create a sequence, here I have just a simple cut. I have Kate and Doc talking.
So an assistant editor can set up a scene bin, having never even
And this is a
watched any of the
UHD
footage,
project.
specific deadlines that you're up against.
So I have them, talking. There could be titles on this. So this would be when you're holding the mobile device horizontally. But in editing, I may need to go in and now decide how I want to create the vertical version of this as well. And we can go into source settings and turn on, using FrameFlex, the new aspect ratio of 9:16, which now gives me a 9:16 vertical extraction. If I want to edit using this way, I can actually move this and animate it so I can get my subject in frame. Or I can go in and turn on the new mask margin, which also uses that same control for 9:16. So if you go to your settings and your format tab, and I go to mask margins, you'll see that there is a new 9:16 setup or preset that when I turn on mask margins in my project settings here, target mask, I can say mix it to white, depending on which window I'm showing. And now, whatever I'm creating visually will be seen and cut to that mask margin. Now, you'll see the issue here is, the shot is between Doc and Kate. So I would create another sequence where I may have, them in frame here. I also may have cut it editorially to have one shot on top of the other.
Cut and move
Sometimes
forward.
presents itself to you.
To create, something a little more interesting. And again, this could have titles that are set that way. And at this point, I would go into a completely new project in Media Composer, because you can set up custom projects now in different formats and frame rates. And I created one that is vertical. I then open up that vertical sequence in this new project. And then I would export
Sometimes
Forward.
presents itself to
And
you.
obviously
Sometimes you're
changes.
looking.
DNX uncompressed, ProRes, whatever is needed, and that would give me my vertical sequence for Quibi. And again, Quibi's secret sauce is going in and adding that magic so that when you do create your turn, it will fill depending on how that's happening. Now, I'm going a little bit over time. We will get to Q&A real quick, but I do want to point out a couple other things that we talk about, which is all part of our post pipeline. And that has to do with DP, or distributed processing. So if I go we'll go back to our little demo project here, and we already have systems set up that aren't being used connected to Nexus here, that I want to go in and send out some renders or anything that I'm working on, but I still want to work. So going into a sequence, let's go back to our little sequence here. Let's say I have a couple of shots that I want to go in and send these to DP. So we go to render. I can choose from the application, this lets me watch the render happen. I could do a background process that happens on my current system, or I could choose distributed processing. And that actually sends that out to the workers and will send and create the processing of all of those renders, but I could still be working and cutting on that sequence. So DP using the UME, the Avid Media Engine, everything in the background is really key. And also I just want to point out Media Composer Enterprise, which is an important function as well, which allows you to customize an experience for editors depending on how they are working in Media Composer. So that's being able to go in and say, I want a producer to not be able to create an export from Media Composer. So I can go in as the administrator here, and I'm going to assign users. Let's take user number 1 here. I can say, I want to turn on and off functionality. I don't want them to be able to capture. I don't want user 1 to be able to capture. I want to decide on how many bins they can create, how many tracks of video and audio. For output, I don't want them to be able to export a file. So when user 1 launches into Media Composer, they're not going to see functions that I have told them they can and cannot see. Formats, I can say, I don't want them to be able to create a project. If they're a producer, they don't need to create a project. Or if they do need to create projects, I only want them to be able to create 1080, maybe 2K projects. And maybe I want to turn off certain codecs, other settings. And the important thing here are snapshots. So in Media Composer, I can turn on and off snapshots or create workspaces that these snapshots can be used for anybody. So, ultimately, again, totally being able to customize anybody's experience depending on their role in the facility is huge. And that's part of Media Composer Enterprise. Again, Media Composer Nexus, Media Composer Enterprise, and distributed processing, all part of Avid's host pipeline with editorial and the process. So, again, that was a lot. I threw a lot at you. I hope it's clear that from this short demonstration that we definitely have enhanced the latest version of Media Composer to make it more modern, more intuitive, a lot of great new features in there. And just to let you know, everything from ingest, edit, finish, total delivery, everything can be done in one package. And we're going to keep doing updates, so stay tuned for other things. So at this point, I think I've left about 20 minutes for Q&A. I don't know how we're going to handle this. Sarah, I don't know if you want to pop in, or I'm assuming that a lot of people have been asking things along the way.
Yes, questions have been coming in throughout. I will let Corey pull up the questions that she's seeing are the most frequent that we can answer on this call, and then any outstanding questions that we can't get to, we will be responding to and sharing with folks via the Q&A report that will be sent via follow-up. So I will let Corey and Mariana bring to your attention any questions that they've been seeing coming up multiple times that we can cover during the next 20 minutes.
Great.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. So we've been answering a lot of them. A couple of the ones that we haven't quite answered yet is, can you change the background of a title while you're playing back?
The title cannot change while you're playing. I mean, if I go in, I think I created a title here with the, I did one with that. So, I mean, the idea is, or the nice thing is, because this is using an effect in the timeline, if you do have an IO box, a DNX ID, IV, Q, any hardware, what you would see here would be going out. But if you go in to make a change to this, let me see if I go in and, I can play stuff here, but if I do any clicking in the window, it will stop. So it's not anything that the title won't be anything live that you can make a change to, if that's answering the question.
Excellent. Hi, everybody. It's Mariana. I just
Hi,
want to
Mariana.
clarify. Hi, Michael. I just want to clarify the 2020.4 because there's a lot of different questions surrounding that. 2020.4 is slated to be released on Monday. Normally, we release at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. What will happen is it will be released through Avid link, My Avid, which is your My Avid master account, which is on my.avid.com, as well as the download center. Usually the download center is the third place to get updated. So the first is your Avid link, then your My Avid, and then the download center. So that'll just give you an update as to when that's coming out. You will need a valid support and upgrade plan in order to get access to that. So if you've got an older version of software, you would need to cross-grade to a subscription in order to get access to that software. So that's just some information for you there. And also the following OS has been qualified. So in the Mac camp, it would be 10.13.6, 10.14.6, which is Mojave, and 10.15.x. One thing I can tell you is there is an outstanding bug in the Mac OS itself that we just identified with Catalina 10.15.4. You may experience some hanging when you are copying large files. So your best bet is to go back to an earlier version of Catalina or to go back to Mojave, and you should be okay at that point, especially if you are going to be copying large files. So that's kind of the update on 2020.4, and I'll pass it over to Corey for another question.
Thanks, Mariana. So, Michael, I think there's a lot of questions coming in, and we've answered a lot of them in the Q&A. And I do want to point out that not only will the this recording be available for all of the registrants afterwards, but we're also going to be providing the questions and answers. So those will also be available.
Thank you.
But there seems to be a lot of, I think it might be useful to spend a little bit of time on talking about what UME is a little bit, and that basically AMA is still a thing. It's not going away, and UME is basically just a new way of new architecture, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. And we'll just go back to where UME is. Yeah, I mean, basically, due to the re-engineering, of the software, we did require UME to help support, a lot of the stuff just to help enhance the process of linking and exporting. And again, it's going to use UME as a default to link because it does offer better support. As I mentioned, if you do need QuickTime, if some files do require QuickTime to link, and you may see that when you are in Source Browser or trying to link, just install QuickTime and it will use it. But this will definitely give you a lot more support. And I think you'll see in the corner, it also offers more updates or future updates with the ACES CDLs, which is important, other custom rasters, and even moving into Dolby Vision. So moving forward, UME is definitely going to be something that we are going to be using and putting a lot more engineering into, because it is going to offer a better experience for everybody.
Great, thanks, Michael. And then there was a question about working in the ACES color space and whether or not, if you've set your project to ACES, will the effects and transitions process in that? And I believe the answer to that is yes. And then there was a question about any specific issues, or not issues, but features that are ACES related in the color correction tools.
Let me see if I can bring that up. I mean, I believe when you start going into ACES, you will be able to choose or preview choosing the nit value, because you need a higher nit value when you are working in ACES. Let me see if I can get that. But yeah, I mean, if you change for anything, it's just like changing in any color space. That's going to change everything, depending also on your output. You'll see the display color space. Display color space here is for the source or record. So if I am in, we'll go back to an ACES setup. So now everything changes. I could change the output color space. Again, this is saying, all right, how am I going to output? You'll see 4,000 nits, 2,000 nits, 100 nits for control. But if I click here and say display color space, you'll see that it only changes the display of the source or record to either follow the output color space. If I am going to change or want to change any output, I don't have any, I don't know if I have any hardware connected because I am remoting into another system, but I could change the output of how it's going out also to be ACES. So you need to decide, once you set up an ACES capable setup, if you want your full workflow to follow the project settings. So if I change anything here, it's going to stay, or depending on how you're displaying, because I may not have an ACES capable monitor, I want to be able to use the monitor and have that adjust so I can visually see it. But everything, if you set it up for ACES, is fully ACES throughout the entire process, everything that you do. Let me see again if I can go to color. So you'll see here, because I'm ACES, my waveforms can now be set up for a much higher range when I am going in to make any changes. So your color correction will be modified or changed depending on the color space that you have selected.
Okay, great. And my understanding is that there's nothing new in terms of I/O related to this release, but some folks have been asking that. I think, but as I said, I don't think there's any new DNX hardware related stuff that's going to be coming out with this release.
Correct. There is no external hardware, any enhancements there. The only enhancement that I know of is if you are working in HDR, if you do have your setting for using any of the HDR, HLG, SMPTE 2084, if you do set up a color space there, if you have a Blackmagic device, DNX, I think the AJA DNX IV as well, it will actually sense the color or the HDR value when you are going out through the hardware, and should modify or change the monitor as well if your monitor senses the HDR changes. As far as I know, that's the only change that has taken place recently, anything having to do with the I/O.
And on the I/O, there was a question about Nitrous DX still being supported, and I believe we have dropped support for that, but someone else can correct me if I'm wrong.
Correct. We've dropped support for that and for the Mojo as well.
Okay. Okay,
So
great.
all that's really compatible are our DNX products and any affiliated OpenIO relationships that we have with Blackmagic, AJA, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. One thing that I'll mention, and Michael, jump in if you have anything else, is a lot of folks are asking about going backwards. So, you know, you're moving forward to a 20/20 build, and you're collaborating with folks that are on older versions. And I will make a blanket statement that we technically don't support doing that yet people do it all the time. So we do know that bringing bins and projects backwards does certainly work. And we're not doing anything actively to make that not work. However, one thing that I want to point out with the 2020 release is that with the changes to linking, the changes that we made with UME related, you know, sometimes related to to QuickTime, necessitating the removal of QuickTime, necessitating that. So there has been some changes to linking. And my point is that if you have a project that is entirely done with linked media, moving forward and backward could be problematic in that once you link to it with UME, you would then have to manually link to the footage again with in the project. So that's just a big sort of red flag for folks that that's something to be aware of, that the changes there could be problematic when you're moving between versions and you have a lot of linked content.
Yeah, and one thing too, Corey, to just support that in this release, I really, really want to stress how important it is to read the What's New document and the README, because those little snippets that Corey's given, Michael tips along the way, some of the things that we've answered on the Q&A, those are all in the What's New document and the README, and they're really not that long, but the way that Nora put them together this time was more in a bulleted fashion so that you can get right to the heart of what you need. But I want to make sure that people read that so that you know what's going on. The other thing that I wanted to tell you is that the long-term maintenance stream, and we've talked about that before, we always call the long-term maintenance stream our previous version. So that would be like the 2018.x or the 2019.x. They're going to be updated with the codecs, for DNX HD's changes. So that all that information is in the What's New document. So just make sure you get a chance to look at that, because whether it applies to 2020.4 or 2019.x, it's just important information for you folks to know.
Thanks, Mariana. So one other thing that's popped up a lot in the questions is where can folks get more information and tutorials and stuff. And so for anyone that's still on a version prior to 2019, we do have a lot of tutorials for moving to the new UI available on our website. And I imagine we will also continue to add more content specific to the 2020 release. So there's nothing's gone live yet because this technically isn't released, but, and there we go, Michael, thank you. So yes, so I would say basically look to the avid.com website on the Media Composer page for the existing 2019 tutorials for people that want to some help moving to the new UI, and then keep an eye out for any new stuff that comes along for 2020. So we are in the process of getting some stuff together.
Yeah, there's a lot of great stuff available. I mean, if you do Google, we do have the Avid YouTube channel. These are some great links here with a couple of our Mod Squad team. Avid Editors on Facebook is an amazing group. I learned stuff off of that. I just keep watching. A lot of great exchange of information also. So if you're not a member of that and you are an Avid editor, it's really, really a great group.
Please, Michael. I'm going to get more private messages now.
You already get a lot, Mariana.
And so also one thing, there's several unanswered questions in the Q&A, and I do want to point out that we will get to those. So I think, as I mentioned, we're going to be cleaning up and sending out the Q&A. So anything that we haven't been able to get to during this time, either because we didn't have time or we just don't have all the information for you, we will be compiling it all and getting answers back to folks. So look for that.
Great. Well, perfect. Anything else? Any other outstanding stuff? Anything else? I think I really appreciate everyone's time and listening. Some great questions, and thanks, Mariana and Imanol and Corey and the rest of the team out there who are helping support this. And thank you to, the team that actually made the software. It was, quite a lot of work. So they've definitely done a lot. And thank you to all of you, the editors, your time and your talent and support. It's all of you that use the software to make amazing things. Again, we hope that you're all healthy and doing well at this time, working remotely. I'm sure there's some people who are working from home. So again, thank you so much for your time and have a fantastic day.